Welcome, heroes, to another Hero Script System tutorial. This time we're going to be going over abilities. Abilities allow you to configure a lot of the things within the system without necessarily needing to script them. Now, this is going to be particularly useful as a way to customize exactly what you need to do without necessarily needing to write your own custom script, and especially useful if you don't normally do scripting. Each ability utilizes an input, which triggers it, and events, which is what the ability ultimately does, utilizing override to get modular values. To install, ensure you have your Hero Script System set up, and then you want to ensure that you add the HSS Abilities Manager. So we go ahead and load that in. Next, what you want to do is you want to create a component where you can actually house your ability. So let's just go ahead and make a test component here. And the component you want to add is a HSS Abilities component. Now, usually you don't necessarily need a synchronization method to anything but none. In the future, there'll be potential use for that. But for now, what we want to do is have this set up as you see right here. And then to add an ability, you click Add Ability. Now, an important thing to note is you don't necessarily want to add more than one HSS Abilities component to the same game object. If you want to add more than one, you'd want to add it to another game object. However, do note that a singular HSS Abilities can contain many abilities. So you don't necessarily need to have more than one abilities unless you want to utilize it for such reasons as organization, or you want to be able to control where they are as a group, or you want to ensure that this ability triggers off specifically the component, or sorry, the game object that it's attached to. All right, so the first thing you want to do is you want to give it a name of some kind. It doesn't really matter. It's just something so you know what the individual ability does. And then you expand this right here in order to see the ability. And then from there, you can add your individual inputs, prerequisites, and events. When you want to add these individual elements, what you want to do is in your prefab loader, which to get this, you just need to go up here and then get the HSS prefab loader. What you want to do is then scroll down with your abilities manager installed to look at the individual events, prerequisites, and inputs and overrides that you wish to add. Now to add them, you just click load, and that will load them into the exact spot that they need to go, and should grab the corresponding Hero Script System scripts and automatically attach them to your project. Next, you want to go back to your ability and then click starting off with Add Input. Now, if you're utilizing a self input, click this drop down here and you can add as many of these as is necessary to trigger this ability. Remember, inputs pretty much fire off your ability, so you want to think about what should cause this ability. For example, let's go ahead and make this happen with a keyboard input. So once you attach that input, you expand it and it should expose its individual parameters that is required. For this one, we're just going to go ahead and use J. Next, depending upon how this is supposed to run, you can add a prerequisite to ensure that it only runs within certain conditions. So for example, if I wanted to, I can utilize a dice roll and then expand that, and this has a whole bunch of options for it to also potentially fire off. We're going to go ahead and just have this dice roller do a 1d6. So this is going to be dice amount, dice sizes. So this is going to be 1d6. We're going to get the sum, and we're going to want it to be greater or equal to 4. So if this rolls 4, 5, or 6, then this ability will fire off. And finally, we're going to add an event. Now with events, this is essentially what your ability is going to do. You've already fired it off, it's going to happen, and now we just need to pick what exactly it does. So for here, we have player mods as an example. Now remember, if you want to have any other kind of event or whatever, just keep looking through this list to find something that's close, and then experiment around. You can find exactly what you need to do. And if it doesn't exist, then go ahead and throw that to the canny as suggestions. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and change a mod. We're going to change the walk speed, and we're going to set it for the local player to 10 or 20. Yeah, we'll do it to 20. So this is now an ability that when you press J, there's a dice roll. You know what? Yeah, we're gonna change this real quick. Okay, we just changed it to essentially roll the dice, but actually display the number because it would be a little more interesting there. So yeah, this is now an ability that will, on the keyboard key here, will, under the condition that it rolls a 4 or higher on a d6, will set the player speed to 20. So let's go ahead and run it. All right, here we go. We're running in here, and then we press J. We rolled a 3. Yep, walk speed is normal. Rolled 5. Now we're running. Obviously, we don't have anything else that it would set to go lower, but there you go. Now we have an ability to run around. Now I wanted to show more specifically the self inputs to show like how this is supposed to work. So here I made a cube, and with this cube, what I'm going to do is, instead of having a keyboard input, I'm going to have an ability, which I'm just going to leave it as new ability as the name. I'm going to have an ability that just simply when a player enters, specifically themselves, enters into the cube, it's going to trigger this ability. Now to keep the ability simple, I'm just going to essentially do a notify from behavior here, and just have it like say, you entered the cube. So in this case, now we have a ability that when you enter into the cube, it's going to say that you have entered into the cube. And now to show, there you go, you entered into the cube. An important thing to note is that when you want to do something like this with an ability, you have to ensure that the ability is attached to the associated object. For example, if you want to add an ability to an item, attach it to the item or a child of the item, such that the ability is copied when the item is instantiated. You have to be mindful of your inputs. Self-inputs will trigger the correct ability within the scene, but other inputs may have unintended effects depending upon how they trigger related to the instantiated items. For instances where an ability triggers on an item or instantiated objects, try different means of affecting the item to ensure you're triggering the correct ability in the scene. For example, within the event game objects, you can select self or child to ensure that you are affecting the game object attached to the ability. And lastly, we're going to look at overrides. So with the notifier here, you could also do something where you send it with data. And quite often with these, you'll see these like default drop downs. These are things that you can switch to switch to a different value than just a simple either text or numeric or whatever it is, to something else, which allows you to also access HSS overrides. This, just like any other ability, you click this, you pick the override that you want, and you can utilize that within the ability that you have created. Specifically under this thing right here, I will go more detail when I cover like more specific components, but with this particular one, in order to utilize it, you have to put these curly braces, open, close, and then put the number in there, is the value. So what this is doing is essentially it's posting a notification, and it's going to say something is the value, but it's going to be taking from this override here. So what we can do is we can switch this to, let's say, display name, and we can do something like near point. And then with that, we can choose to pick near point like a transform. Now, as I mentioned before, this is fine here because this is not within an item, but this transform is going to be trying to find a game object. We're going to associate it with this cube, and it's okay because this is not an item. It's in this list over here. So we're going to go ahead and say, it's going to say the display name of the target player that's near this point. Actually, let's say instead of is in the cube. Okay, so now we have an ability that when you enter this cube, it's going to say blank is in the cube, but specifically going to override that value with the display name of the person who is near the cube. So now when you run through the cube, it says Zeshin is in the cube because I am the player that's closest. Something else to note is that you can create values that you can utilize through all of your abilities, which are your ability values. All the abilities are stored within the abilities manager, which is why whenever any of your abilities accesses a particular value, it can access the value throughout any of the other abilities. With this, it is, you should note that if you wanted to make one that is only associated with a particular ability, you should probably give it a unique name. Now, to make, manipulate, or whatever any ability values, what you want to do is add the event ability values. And if you wanted to use an ability value as a means of checking whether or not you can use this ability, you use the prereq ability values. On top of that, you can utilize the ability values changes in order to cause your ability to trigger off when an ability changes, as well as use override ability value if you want to use a particular ability value in any of the parameters that allows you to override them. Now, a thing to note is that there are two types of values. By default, when you're setting or adjusting a value, it is a local value. Otherwise, it is a synced value. Now, with any of the ability values, you can go ahead and set a value whenever you want, and if it doesn't exist, it will set the value. I do recommend, though, if you're going to adjust the value, remember that it's defaulted to whatever is like the most basic value. For like numeric, it'd be 0, and string would be nothing. So you'll probably want to set the value. And a good way to do that is you want to do this on the self-input during on set defaults, which will run before all the system actually gets a chance to fire off and do things. Essentially, sets defaults is what every script sets their initial defaults with. Now, local values you can pretty much just use whenever, but if you want to use a synced value, synced values are pretty much the same across all of the players. So it's a great way to actually utilize like a world value. In order to do this, though, you have to ensure that you set its variable definition. You could do this by going over here to the HSS stats, and you can add variable definitions. And here you can set its ID and give it a name, and you want to make sure that it has a unique name and ID because it uses that in order to find it via the name. And these are the other ones that your system is currently using. Occasionally you might want to just hit a refresh to make sure like it grabbed all the values within the system, but yeah, make sure it doesn't share the same name or ID with any of your other values. And then you want to set what type it is and if it's an array. In general, the ability values don't use arrays, but you want to make sure to set this up prior. Additionally, you can have an ability set a variable definition here, but I highly recommend that if you're going to do it this way, you want to make sure that you do it during the sets defaults area or on initiated, just to make sure that it gets the variable definition in before anything has a chance to actually utilize it. A thing to note with all of these abilities is that they can dynamically change from one type to another. So for example, if you're calling upon a numeric value with a text value, it will return the actual string value of whatever is stored in there. And I do have a couple of things that goes between vectors and non-vectors, which essentially like a vector going to a numeric will take like its magnitude, a color going to a numeric will take its grayscale. But in general, like anything to text is fine. Everything else you probably want to use whatever is the particular value and do your abilities to adjust the values within that particular thing however you want it to do exactly. But in general, you don't have to worry about necessarily breaking just because it's referring to the wrong value. Now, other useful components that are out there are things like the UI ability or UI trigger ability, which you want to put this on like a button or a toggle or slider or something. And then that allows you to actually trigger existing abilities within your world by like a button click or something that you're using for your UI. So you simply just like attach the ability there, and then whenever you like click a button that has this UI trigger ability on it, it will actually trigger the associated ability with of course making sure you specify the correct ability ID, as I pointed out a few times. But you could use this to actually trigger several ability IDs if you wanted to on a particular ability. And then there's also trigger ability with interact. This one allows you to put it on an object, and if you were to ever click it like it's a button, if you ever seen like 3D buttons in a world, they use the interact mechanic, which you can specify their interact text and whatnot, but that makes it so that when you click that particular button, it will then allow you to trigger an ability. And again, you just put the ability on there and then list the individual ability IDs that trigger on said ability. Now, finally, if you are done putting all of the abilities within your scene and you want to make sure to keep your scene optimized, not all of these need to be in your scene. So if you want to clean it up, you can go up here to this menu item, the HSS menu item, and you can click abilities and you can remove unused ability components, and it will tell you all the ones that you're not using in your scene. And there you go. Now we're pretty much optimized to only have the singular input that this ability is using, and all the other ones don't have to be set up, used, or whatever. Very, very useful when wanting to optimize your scene. But now let's say, so I have an input gesture direction on here, and for whatever reason I didn't have input gesture direction in here. It will automatically add the input gesture direction to your inputs when you click that ability. But if you want to just be safe and ensure all of the things within your system, and you don't have to go and find all the individual abilities, you can go over here and then click add needed ability components, and this will go through all of the abilities in your scene and ensure that it adds them to your scene, so that way all of your stuff properly functions. Just to kind of show here, add needed ability components, and there it goes. It adds it right there. And that's a lot, but that is pretty much everything that is within this project, or with specifically abilities. In the future, like I said, I plan to add more as time goes on, so keep a lookout for that. I want to add more things that will interact as updates happen, and any particular ability components need more specifications, I will ensure to notify you guys on how they're used. I might even do videos related to them. But if you have any questions, please comment in the comment section below. But also, if you want to ask any other questions, you can join my Discord, which will be in the description below as well. And if there's any suggestions that you have, please visit my Canny. That's HeroesNFools.canny.io. Also in the description below, very useful way to report bugs and also request new features. And that's it. Anyways, guys, thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time. Take care and goodbye.